We approached Earth for repairs. They restored us, armed us, and changed the war. Sci-fi story. The alien fleet drifted silently through the emptiness of space, their ships scarred, battered, and leaking radiation like wounds that refused to heal. Years of relentless war had left every vessel damaged, every crew member exhausted. Once proud and unyielding, the fleet now seemed fragile, as if one strong impact could shatter it entirely. Their sensors were failing, their engines sputtered unpredictably, and the air inside some ships was stale with the faint metallic smell of machine oil and fear. The galaxy had once been full of opportunities for exploration, diplomacy, and conquest. But now it felt like a place that had turned its back on them. Commander Aaron, leader of the fleet, sat in the central control room of the largest ship. His three eyes scanned the flickering screens, trying to make sense of the damage reports. There was a deep weight pressing on him, heavier than any gravity he had ever known. He had commanded hundreds of battles, faced enemies who seemed unstoppable, and survived situations that would have destroyed lesser beings. Yet here, in the quiet dark between stars, the reality was undeniable. They were running out of options. "Shields are at 12%, a young officer reported, her voice tight with anxiety. "We won't last another encounter like the last." Aaron nodded slowly, though no one could see the strain behind his calm exterior. They had fought desperately on countless fronts, their enemies advancing with precision and power far beyond anything they had ever imagined. Each battle had cost them ships, lives, and hope. The losses were no longer numbers. They were faces, voices, stories snuffed out before they could be completed. Somewhere in the distance, a bright blue star glimmered faintly. It was the planet Earth, a tiny world that had once been of little interest to the galaxy. Humanity had not been involved in any galactic conflicts and had no significant technology capable of influencing interstellar wars. To the fleet, Earth had always been neutral, almost invisible, but now, with every ship creaking and sparking under the strain of battle, it became their last hope. "Earth," Aran said quietly, almost to himself. "If there is anywhere we can survive, it is there." Approaching another world carried risks. Their enemy had sensors that could track even the faintest energy signatures, and entering a system that belonged to another species could provoke unpredictable reactions. Yet the alternative was clear. If they did not find repairs and shelter soon, the entire fleet and everything it represented would be lost forever. As the fleet slowly altered course toward Earth, the crew began to feel the first threads of relief mixed with lingering fear. They had been fighting for so long that even the idea of repair seemed almost fantastical. Some whispered stories of legends from before the war, of ships and crews restored to full power, of technology renewed and shining again. Those stories had felt distant, almost childish. But now, facing the possibility of extinction, those stories seemed like a beacon, however faint, in the darkness. Inside the human space agencies on Earth, the first signals from the fleet caused confusion and alarm. Scientists and engineers were astonished to receive incoming transmissions not from satellites or probes, but from alien vessels requesting landing permission, or at least permission to remain in orbit long enough for repairs. Many people on Earth assumed it was a prank, a hoax, or a technical error. But the signals were too structured, too advanced, and too deliberate to be ignored. Within hours, top-level meetings convened in secure underground facilities. Governments debated what to do, but the aliens' condition made the decision simpler. The fleet was clearly exhausted, their technology failing, and their intentions, at least initially, appeared peaceful. It was an opportunity unlike any Earth had faced before, to study beings and technology far beyond their understanding, without the risk of immediate hostility. Back on the fleet, tension remained high. The aliens were not used to relying on others for survival. They were warriors, explorers, and inventors, proud of their strength and capability. Accepting help was a bitter pill, difficult to swallow. Many officers muttered about pride and honor, struggling with the idea that they might be dependent on a species they had always considered insignificant.
The journey toward Earth was slow.
Repairs on the ships themselves had to be made while in transit, using whatever resources remained. Crews worked around the clock, their movements precise but weary, guided by instinct and discipline that had kept them alive so far. Audon moved through the corridors, offering words of encouragement, but also silently acknowledging the fragility of the situation. One mistake could mean disaster. Meanwhile, smaller craft were sent ahead to observe the planet, gathering atmospheric data, mapping potential landing sites, and checking for threats. Earth appeared calm, its oceans and continents shining in blue and green. Its cities glimmered faintly at night, evidence of life and activity, but there were no signs of advanced defense systems capable of targeting the fleet from orbit. For the first time in years, the aliens felt something that resembled hope. As the fleet approached, the aliens observed humans for the first time. They were smaller, slower, and physically weaker, but their curiosity and ingenuity were evident. Humans were already constructing machines to explore space, despite having far less experience or knowledge than the aliens possessed. There was something in their persistence that intrigued Errand and his officers, a stubborn determination that even the war had not taught them to recognize. Communication was established carefully. The aliens sent structured messages using universal mathematical patterns and symbols to indicate they required assistance. Humans responded with a mixture of fear, caution, and fascination. Every message was analyzed, translated, and cross-checked by teams of scientists and linguists. Slowly, a basic understanding formed, and the aliens were granted permission to enter orbit. When the fleet finally settled above Earth, the sight of the planet from orbit left many crew members speechless. Its beauty was unlike anything they had seen in the war-torn sectors of the galaxy, vivid blues, greens, and whites stretching endlessly beneath them. For the first time in years, they felt a connection to something other than survival and conflict. Aron walked the observation deck, watching the planet rotate beneath him. He could feel the weight of decisions yet to come. Repairing the ships would be the first step, but the humans' response had been unexpectedly thorough. They had already begun sending equipment and teams to help. For a species the aliens had underestimated, they were far more capable than expected. Still, there was caution. They had come for repairs, nothing more. Their history was filled with betrayal, and they could not allow themselves to be manipulated. The fleet had survived for decades by relying on careful planning, superior technology, and unflinching resolve. Now, however, the rules were changing. Earth would not be just a stopover. It would become part of the story that could decide the fate of their entire war. As night fell over the planet, glowing cities twinkling like stars reflected in the oceans, Aron allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. They had survived countless battles, outsmarted enemies far stronger and faster, and endured losses that would have broken lesser beings. But nothing had prepared them for what lay ahead. Trusting a species they had always considered primitive in order to survive. The repairs would begin at dawn. Humans would work alongside them, attempting to restore engines, shields, and life support systems. It was a collaboration born of necessity. But for some, there was a strange sense of anticipation. Perhaps in this unlikely alliance there was not just survival, but also something new, something the war had never given them. A chance to rebuild, not just their ships, but their hope. As the stars shimmered in the blackness beyond the observation windows, Aron silently vowed to protect his fleet at all costs. Earth was unfamiliar, strange, and full of unknowns. But it was also their only chance. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, survival seemed within reach. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of failing engines and the quiet murmurs of crew members preparing for the work ahead. Tomorrow would bring challenges, learning, and perhaps surprises that no one could yet imagine. But for now, the fleet rested in orbit, fragile yet determined, above a small blue planet, and thus began a story that none of them could have predicted. A story that would test loyalty, ingenuity, and courage in ways far beyond the battlefield. Earth had become a place of repair, a place of hope, and perhaps, unknowingly, the first step toward changing the course of a war that had seemed endless. The morning sun reflected off the curved surfaces of the alien fleet, glinting like faint stars suspended above Earth. Below, humans watched in awe as these massive ships, unlike anything they had seen before, hung silently in orbit. Scientists, engineers, and military officials gathered in control rooms, monitoring every movement, every transmission. Their hearts raced, not out of fear, but because they knew history was unfolding before their eyes. This was not a story from books or movies. It was real, and they were part of it. For Commander Aaron and his crew, the first hours on Earth were strange and tense. They had expected repairs to be simple, technical work done by human engineers under their careful supervision. Yet what they found was entirely unexpected. Humans did not just follow instructions. They observed, questioned, and suggested improvements. Their curiosity was relentless, almost irritating to some of the older officers who were used to strict adherence to orders. A young human engineer named Elena moved carefully through the engine room of the largest alien ship. Her fingers traced wires and conduits, noting weaknesses and inconsistencies the aliens had accepted as standard. "If we reroute this conduit," she explained, pointing at a delicate set of energy lines, "you could increase efficiency without adding new power sources. It would stabilize the core." One of the alien engineers, tall and gaunt with 3 sharp eyes, frowned. "We have worked this way for decades. Our systems are optimized for survival. Changing them could create risk. Sometimes risk is necessary to survive. You've made it this far, but there are ways to make the impossible more likely to succeed." Haran watched from above, arms crossed behind his back. He was cautious but curious. He had expected humans to be clever, but this level of innovation, this ability to see weaknesses and correct them instantly, was beyond anything he had encountered. Slowly, he began to understand something important. Earth might not just repair their fleet. Earth might change it. As the day passed, small teams of humans and aliens worked side by side. Communication was slow at first, requiring careful translation of technical terms and gestures. The aliens were formal, precise, and sometimes impatient. Humans were flexible, creative, and unafraid to question authority. At first, these differences caused tension. A misinterpreted instruction could lead to frustration, raised voices, and pauses in the work. But over time, both sides began to adapt. The aliens learned to trust human intuition, while humans learned to respect the precision and discipline of the alien engineers. Meanwhile, in the command room above Earth, military analysts were paying close attention to every detail. The aliens were cautious about sharing their tactics and strategies, as if worried humans might judge them unworthy. Yet the humans were fascinated. They studied diagrams, energy flow patterns, and ship designs, trying to understand the logic behind systems that seemed far more advanced than anything Earth had created. Every discovery excited them. Every improvement made to the fleet sparked new questions. At lunch, Aaron joined a group of senior officers to discuss the situation. "They are unlike any allies we have known," he said. "Their solutions are unorthodox but effective. I do not know if we should be grateful or cautious." One officer, a wiry veteran named Kale, shook his head. "Gratitude is secondary. Survival is primary." But I will admit they are impressive. The aliens were learning too. Not just technical knowledge, but something subtler. Humans had a way of seeing possibilities where none seemed to exist, of turning mistakes into advantages, and of thinking in ways that were flexible and adaptive. Aaron realized that these traits, combined with their own technology and discipline, could give them an edge in the war that had cost them so much. However, trust was fragile. Some officers whispered warnings that humans were unpredictable and might exploit their vulnerability. Others argued that survival demanded cooperation. The fleet had survived for centuries through unity, obedience, and order. Yet now they were forced to rely on beings they barely understood, creatures who seemed fragile but possessed a unique strength, resilience born not of technology but of imagination and determination. By the second day, progress was evident. Engines hummed more steadily, shields stabilized, and communication systems became clearer. Small sparks of hope began to spread among the crew. Some allowed themselves a rare smile. Others spoke quietly to companions about the possibilities of returning to the front lines, of regaining lost ground. The fleet still carried the scars of war, but Earth had begun to mend them, piece by piece, wire by wire. As evening fell over the planet, Aaron walked along a quiet observation deck. The sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows over cities and oceans below. He could hear the faint hum of repaired engines and the murmurs of human voices through comms channels. There was a strange serenity in this place, unlike any battlefield or command center he had known. It was almost peaceful. Yet Aaron remained cautious. He knew this peace was temporary. The war outside the solar system raged on, relentless and merciless. Repairing the fleet was only the first step. The challenge that followed would test every skill, every strategy, and every instinct. But for the first time in decades, there was a sense of possibility. Perhaps with humans, the fleet could not only survive but return stronger. Elena and her team worked late into the night, their focus absolute. They had identified flaws in the weapons systems, shielding and navigation, proposing solutions that the aliens had never considered. Some crew members muttered under their breath about human audacity, while others quietly admired it. The mixture of skepticism and admiration created a tense but productive atmosphere.
One alien officer approached Aaron during a rare break.
Commander, I do not understand them fully. They are so different.
Their methods? Unusual, yet somehow effective. Aran nodded, staring out at the endless black of space. They are human. We are alien. But their value is clear. They can make what is broken stronger. That is something we must respect. Even as repairs continued, the aliens began to notice something deeper. Humans did not just improve machines, they influenced morale. Crew members laughed quietly at jokes, shared meals with engineers, and told stories about home. These small gestures, simple by human standards, reminded the alien crew of a world beyond war, of lives worth protecting. The youngest alien cadet, barely a year into service, watched Elena demonstrate a modification to a shield generator. "Why do they care so much?" he asked his friend. "Because they have hope," the friend replied. "Hope is powerful, even stronger than technology. That is why they can help us." By the third day, the work had become more than technical. Humans and aliens had formed routines, ways to communicate, and a shared sense of purpose. The alien fleet began to regain confidence not only in its engines and shields, but in its ability to act decisively, efficiently, and creatively. The transformation was subtle at first, but unmistakable. Yet challenges remained. Some repairs were complex beyond imagination, requiring careful calculation and experimentation. There were moments when systems failed after minor adjustments, when sparks flew and alarms sounded, and the human engineers had to act quickly to prevent disaster. These moments tested patience and cooperation, but each success brought a sense of accomplishment and reinforced trust between the species. Even as they worked together, the aliens could not ignore the reality of their situation. The war outside the solar system waited, relentless as ever. Repairs alone would not win battles. Strategy, planning, and courage would be required. But now, armed with human insight, they had a chance to change the odds in ways they had never imagined. As the sun rose on the fourth day, the fleet shimmered faintly in Earth's orbit, engines humming steadily, shields glowing softly, and communication systems fully operational. The transformation was visible, tangible, and undeniable. Crew members spoke quietly about their gratitude, their hope, and the strange alliance forming between two species that had once seemed impossible to reconcile. Aaron stood again on the observation deck, watching Earth spin beneath him. He felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. Humans had done more than repair his fleet. They had improved it. They had offered insight, courage, and creativity. And most importantly, they had reminded the alien crew of something that technology alone could never provide: belief in a future worth fighting for. The fleet would soon leave orbit, returning to the war that had cost so much. But when it did, it would not be the same fleet that arrived, wounded, weary, and uncertain. It would be a fleet strengthened, inspired, and guided by a force it had never anticipated. Humans had become more than engineers and helpers. They had become partners in survival, allies in hope, and catalysts for change.
As night fell once more, Aaron allowed himself a quiet thought. Perhaps this alliance, fragile and unlikely though it was, could reshape the war itself.
And as the stars twinkled above the earth, he wondered what the universe would think when a fleet, repaired and improved by a small blue planet, returned to the battlefield with renewed strength.
And somewhere deep inside him, a small voice whispered a thought that had been impossible only days ago. Survival was no longer enough. With humans by their side, victory might be possible.
The alien fleet had rested above Earth for several days now, but rest was no longer enough. The repairs had been completed, systems stabilized, and engines humming steadily once more.
Crew members moved through corridors with a renewed sense of purpose. Yet something was different.
They were no longer just a fleet seeking survival. They were a fleet that had been observed, studied, and improved by a species they had once considered insignificant.
Humans. Commander Aaron stood on the observation deck of the largest ship, looking down at the glowing cities below. He could feel the subtle hum of the engines beneath his feet, the vibration of power flowing through the hull. It was stronger than anything he had felt since the first battles of the war.
He knew that human engineers had done more than repair. They had upgraded, optimized, and strengthened. And now came a question that had not existed before. What else could humans do?
Inside a lab on Earth, Elena and her team had begun analyzing the alien weapon systems more closely. They were not content with simple repairs.
They were curious, determined, and bold. The shields can withstand more energy if we reprogram the distribution arrays, she said to her team. The engines can move faster if we reroute the cooling systems. And the weapons. They can be sharper, quicker, more precise.
One of the alien officers, Kale, observed silently. He had been skeptical at first, wary of human interference. But as he watched the team work, carefully adjusting settings, running simulations, and testing small modifications, he began to realize the truth. Humans could see solutions the aliens had never imagined.
They were creative in ways that technology alone could not explain. Aran entered the lab quietly, his 3 eyes scanning the workstations.
"Explain," he said simply. Elena pointed to a holographic display.
Your targeting systems are powerful, but predictable. We can add small adjustments that calculate enemy movements in real time. Your weapons will hit faster, more accurately, and avoid counterattacks. It will require software integration, but the technology already exists. We just need to apply it.
The alien officers exchanged glances. Predictability had been a cornerstone of their tactics.
They believed in overwhelming force and precise coordination. The idea that their systems could be improved by another species challenged everything they had known.
Kale spoke first.
This
may change how we fight entirely. Are you certain this will work?
We won't know until we test it. But the simulations show significant improvement. The enemy won't anticipate it. For Aran, this was a turning point.
He realized that survival was no longer the only goal. With human ingenuity, they could gain an advantage, a chance not just to defend, but to take control of the war in ways they had never thought possible. The question was whether they were ready to embrace it, and whether the humans could be trusted to do so. The first test came sooner than expected.
Early reconnaissance detected a small enemy fleet entering the outskirts of the solar system. The aliens had always been cautious, expecting overwhelming attacks, but this time the humans had prepared strategies as well. Engineers and analysts from Earth worked alongside alien officers to design defensive maneuvers, reroute power to weapons, and coordinate movements in ways that combined alien discipline with human unpredictability. Aran gave the order. Prepare to engage. Defensive protocols only. Observe the results. The fleet moved in silent, controlled formations.
Energy shields shimmered as the enemy fleet approached, but this time the shields were stronger, more adaptive. Weapon systems hummed in perfect harmony, anticipating enemy movements. And for the first time, the aliens noticed a subtle but crucial difference. The humans had taught them to be unpredictable. The enemy ships fired, expecting a straightforward response.
Yet the alien fleet, guided by human-influenced strategies, dodged and countered in ways that shocked the attackers. Missiles were rerouted, lasers deflected, and communication networks scrambled enemy coordination. The small fleet retreated, confused and unprepared. In the aftermath, the alien officers gathered around Iran.
They were not expecting this, Kale said, his voice low. The humans, they have changed us.
They have changed the way we fight. Aran nodded slowly. Yes, and now we must decide how far we go. Repairs and upgrades are one thing, tactical changes are another. We're no longer just survivors. We have a choice.
The humans were equally aware of the stakes. Engineers, analysts, and strategists worked late into the night, refining calculations, running simulations, and suggesting improvements.
They were careful, knowing that mistakes could cost lives. Yet there was excitement in the air, a shared sense of purpose that transcended species.
Elena walked along the observation deck of the largest ship, observing crew members adjusting to the new systems. "They're learning fast," she said quietly to one of her colleagues.
They're not just adapting, they're embracing it.
Her colleague smiled.
It's more than learning. They're starting to think differently. That is the real change. Indeed, change was occurring everywhere. Crew members who had once doubted the humans' abilities now spoke of strategy sessions, simulations, and innovations with a mix of awe and respect.
Even the older officers who had once insisted on tradition and caution found themselves considering new approaches, reevaluating tactics, and discussing possibilities that would have seemed reckless weeks before. Yet tension remained.
Not everyone was comfortable with these changes. Some feared that humans might overreach, that introducing new strategies could backfire in unpredictable ways. Others worried that reliance on humans could make them vulnerable. The alien fleet had survived because it trusted in its own strength and discipline. Now that trust was being shared with outsiders. Despite these concerns, Aran made a decision. The fleet would not return to battle until it had fully integrated the humans' improvements, not only in technology but in tactics. He understood that this was more than preparation. It was a transformation, a moment that could decide the course of the war itself. The following days were filled with intense work. Humans and aliens collaborated on upgrades to navigation systems, propulsion, weapon targeting, and shield distribution. Every system was analyzed, adjusted, and tested. Crew members learned new techniques, practiced maneuvers, and studied simulations that combined alien logic with human creativity. It was exhausting, challenging, and exhilarating all at once.
Aran observed the changes with a mixture of pride and caution. The fleet was stronger, faster, and smarter. But the true test would come when it faced the enemy again. Repairs and upgrades could only do so much. Courage, coordination, and leadership would still be essential. The first trial of the new systems came when an enemy scout approached unexpectedly. Sensors detected the ship, and Aran gave the order to engage. This time, the fleet did not react in predictable patterns. Guided by human-influenced tactics, they moved with a balance of precision and adaptability, striking with speed and accuracy. The scout was neutralized without a single loss. The success sparked a quiet celebration among the crew. For the first time, they felt the possibility of not only surviving but winning. Humans and aliens shared a look of mutual respect, an acknowledgement that they had achieved something together that neither species could have done alone.
Yet the victory also brought a reminder of the challenges ahead. The war was far from over.
Larger enemy fleets loomed in the distance, waiting for weaknesses to exploit. But now, for the first time in decades, the alien fleet carried a new confidence, a sense that with humans at their side, they could face the enemy on terms they had never imagined.
Elena, standing beside Aaron, watched the fleet from the observation deck. "They're ready," she said softly. Aaron nodded. "Ready, but not yet complete. There is more to learn, more to prepare, and soon we will return to the war."
The stars stretched endlessly around them. indifferent to the struggles below. But in the quiet of space, a new force was forming, an alliance between humans and aliens that had the power to shift the balance of war.
It was fragile, untested, and filled with uncertainty, yet it was also strong, clever, and full of hope.
As the fleet rested that night, engines humming steadily and shields glowing softly, crew members reflected on the changes they had experienced. They had come to Earth seeking repairs, expecting only to survive. Instead, they had found new strength, new strategies, and a new perspective on what it meant to fight.
Humans had not only restored their ships, they had transformed them, and in doing so had begun to transform the war itself.
And in the quiet of the observation deck, Commander Aaron allowed himself a rare thought. Perhaps this alliance could win the war not through power alone, but through ingenuity, creativity, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. For the first time in decades, the future did not feel hopeless. The alien fleet had left Earth's orbit at dawn, engines humming steadily, shields glowing with a renewed strength. For the first time in decades, the fleet moved not just to survive, but with purpose, guided by strategies they had learned from humans. Every officer on board felt the change. Their ships were faster, their weapons more precise, their shields more resilient, but more importantly, their minds were sharper. They were no longer predictable, and that unpredictability could tip the balance of the war. Commander Aaron stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars streak past as they moved toward enemy territory. He could feel the quiet excitement among the crew. Even the oldest officers, who had once been cautious and skeptical, now whispered about possibilities that had seemed impossible only days before.
Aaron knew that the success of this fleet depended not only on technology but on courage, coordination, and trust, and for the first time he believed that they could succeed.
The first encounter came sooner than expected. A large enemy fleet appeared on the sensors, moving in formation, their energy shields glowing ominously in the void of space.
The aliens had faced these opponents countless times before, and the memory of previous defeats was fresh in every mind, but this time, they were different. They had humans' guidance, improved systems, and a new sense of creativity that could catch the enemy off guard. Aaron gave the order. Engage, but remain adaptive. Observe, respond, and trust the new systems. The fleet moved like a single organism, every ship adjusting its position with precision.
The weapon systems, guided by human algorithms, anticipated enemy movements. Shields shifted in real time to absorb incoming attacks. And for the first time, the aliens noticed something subtle but powerful. The fleet was no longer reacting predictably. They were thinking ahead, improvising, and using strategies that the enemy could not anticipate.
The enemy fired, expecting a simple defensive response. Missiles were launched, energy beams cut through space, but the alien fleet was prepared.
Weapons intercepted attacks, shields absorbed impacts, and countermeasures disrupted enemy targeting systems. The humans' innovations had changed everything. What had once been a deadly confrontation was now a carefully controlled engagement. In the control room, human engineers monitored the battle from Earth.
They communicated through secure channels, advising adjustments in real time. Elena's voice crackled through the comms, calm and focused.
Increase shield modulation by 15%. Divert extra power to the rear engines. Expect a maneuver to the left quadrant in 30 seconds. Aaron nodded at his officers. Follow the plan. Adjust as necessary. We will win through precision and unpredictability. The battle raged, but the alien fleet moved with efficiency and control.
Enemy ships were forced to retreat, their formation broken, their attacks less coordinated. For the first time, the aliens felt what victory could taste like, a combination of power, strategy, and innovation. Crew members cheered quietly as the last enemy ship was pushed back. There were no dramatic explosions, no catastrophic losses, only a sense of accomplishment and growing confidence.
After the battle, Aaron called a meeting with his officers. Today, we proved something important, he said. We are not the same fleet that arrived at Earth. We are stronger, faster, and smarter. But we cannot underestimate the enemy. They will adapt, and we must continue to improve. Cried. Kale, the veteran officer, nodded. We have new tools and strategies, but our courage and coordination will still be tested. We must remain vigilant." The humans were equally aware of the stakes. They had seen the fleet in action and understood that their guidance had made a difference, but the war was far from over. Engineers and strategists worked late into the night, analyzing the engagement, refining algorithms, and proposing further upgrades. Every success brought new challenges, and every challenge demanded creativity, patience, and trust. Over the following weeks, the fleet engaged in several smaller encounters with enemy patrols. Each time, the humans' influence was evident. Weapons fired faster and more accurately, shields adapted to unpredictable attacks, and the fleet moved with coordination that combined alien discipline with human ingenuity. The enemy began to notice a change. Their scouts reported ships behaving in ways that defied expectation, strategies that were harder to predict, and a resilience they had not anticipated. On board the flagship, Aran walked among his crew, observing their determination. Young cadets who had once feared battle now trained with confidence, adapting to new strategies and learning to think creatively in the moment. Veteran officers who had relied on tradition for decades were beginning to embrace flexibility, improvisation, and collaboration. Even the scientists who had initially doubted the humans' abilities were quietly impressed. Elena and her team worked alongside alien engineers, guiding adjustments to weapon systems, shields, and communication networks. "The fleet can move faster if we optimize engine synchronization," she said. "And the weapons will be more effective if we anticipate enemy maneuvers instead of simply reacting." Kyle leaned over, studying the schematics. "They are not just improving machines, they are changing how we think."
"That is more valuable than any technology," Aran allowed himself a quiet thought. The humans had done more than repair the fleet. They had taught it to adapt, to think, and to grow. And that could make all the difference in the battles yet to come. One day, as the fleet approached a contested sector, they detected a massive enemy force, larger than any they had faced in years. The aliens had always feared such encounters, but now they felt a mixture of anticipation and readiness. The humans' influence had changed them, and for the first time, there was hope that victory might be possible.
"Prepare for engagement," Aran ordered. "This is not just a battle. This is a test of everything we have learned." The enemy moved in formation, confident in their overwhelming numbers, but the alien fleet, guided by human strategies, executed maneuvers that were fluid, precise, and unpredictable. Weapons struck at unexpected angles, shields absorbed impacts that would have destroyed ships in the past, and communication networks disrupted enemy coordination. Every move demonstrated the effectiveness of the humans' influence, and the crew felt a surge of pride and confidence. Despite the tension, the fleet maintained control. Losses were minimal, and the enemy was forced to retreat. For the first time in decades, the aliens realized that the war could be turned in their favor. Not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, adaptation, and collaboration. After the battle, Aran addressed the crew. "We have changed the course of this war today," he said. "Not because we are stronger, but because we are smarter. Because we are willing to learn, adapt, and trust others. Earth has given us more than repairs. They have given us a new way to fight." The crew cheered quietly, their voices full of pride and determination. Even the most skeptical officers acknowledged that their alliance with humans had transformed them in ways they could never have imagined. As the fleet moved forward, they continued to integrate human strategies into their operations. Crew members trained relentlessly, simulations ran continuously, and improvements were made in real time. The fleet had become a living, evolving force, stronger, faster, and smarter than ever before. Yet even as they celebrated their successes, the aliens remained cautious. They knew the war was far from over. Larger fleets, more advanced weapons, and cunning enemies waited beyond the horizon. But for the first time, they faced the future with confidence, armed not just with technology, but with creativity, adaptability, and the knowledge that they were not alone. Elena walked along the observation deck of the flagship, watching the stars streak past. She had grown fond of the aliens, respecting their discipline, admiring their courage, and appreciating their willingness to learn. "They're not just allies," she said quietly.
They're becoming something more. Something stronger because of what we've shared with them. Aaron listened silently, allowing himself a rare smile. Yes, he said softly. They are no longer the same fleet that arrived here. They are something new. And together, we may finally change the course of the war. The stars stretched endlessly around them, silent witnesses to the transformation below. The fleet had grown stronger, more agile, and more resilient. They had faced the enemy and adapted, learning to combine their own discipline with the humans' ingenuity. And though the war was far from over, for the first time in decades, the alien fleet moved forward, not with fear, but with hope and determination.
And somewhere deep inside Commander Aran, a thought had taken root. A thought he had never allowed himself to consider before. Perhaps this alliance, fragile though it was, could not only help them survive, perhaps it could help them win. The alien fleet moved steadily through the darkness of space, their engines humming with renewed power, their shields glowing like faint silver clouds. They had faced enemy forces again and again, and each time they had emerged stronger, faster, and smarter. The alliance with humans had changed everything, not only their technology, but their way of thinking, their strategies, and their hope for the future. Now, the time had come to see the true consequences of this transformation. Commander Aaron stood on the observation deck of the flagship, watching the stars blur past as the fleet approached a contested sector. The enemy had gathered their forces, a massive armada that had once seemed invincible. Their numbers were larger than any the fleet had faced before.
And yet, for the first time in decades, Aaron did not feel fear. He felt confidence, tempered with caution, but confidence nonetheless. Prepare for engagement, he ordered. This is the culmination of everything we have learned.
Trust the systems, trust each other, and trust what we have gained from Earth. The crew moved efficiently, every officer and cadet focused, every ship adjusting in precise formation.
The human engineers and strategists had worked tirelessly anticipating enemy movements, running simulations and refining tactics. The aliens had embraced these strategies, adapting them to their own instincts and discipline. The result was a fleet that was unpredictable, intelligent, and coordinated in ways the enemy had never imagined. As the massive enemy fleet appeared on the sensors, Aaron allowed himself a brief moment to reflect.
They had come so far, from desperate survivors seeking repairs on a small, distant planet, to a transformed force capable of challenging the most powerful enemy in the galaxy. And it had not been the machines alone that made the difference. It was the collaboration, the shared knowledge, and the courage to embrace something new. The first shots were fired. Energy beams streaked through space, missiles arced toward their targets, and shields shimmered under pressure. The enemy expected the same predictable responses that had failed them before, but this time the alien fleet moved differently. Weapons fired in patterns that were hard to anticipate, shields shifted in real time to absorb energy, and the ships themselves maneuvered with a combination of precision and creativity that the enemy could not match. Human advisors communicated through secure channels, guiding adjustments in real time. Elena's voice was calm, precise, and confident. Shift power to the left quadrant. Divert additional energy to the forward shields. Anticipate evasive maneuvers from the enemy in 40 seconds. The fleet responded instantly, moving as one. Enemy attacks were deflected, missiles intercepted, and ships adjusted positions faster than anyone could have predicted. The advantage had shifted. For the first time, the alien crew saw that they were no longer on the defensive. They could shape the battle on their terms. Kale, standing beside Aaron, allowed himself a rare smile. They won't expect this, he said. We've taken the initiative.
Aaron nodded silently. The victory was not guaranteed, but the momentum had changed. The enemy fleet, confused and disoriented by the unexpected strategies, began to falter. Missiles missed their targets, formations broke, and communication networks scrambled under interference. Every maneuver by the alien fleet, guided by humans, pushed the enemy further back. As the battle continued, the alien ships began to notice something remarkable. The fear that had once accompanied every engagement was gone. Crew members were calm, focused, and confident. They had survived before, yes, but now they believed they could succeed. And that belief, combined with improved technology and strategies, made them even more formidable. The enemy, sensing the change, attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The alien fleet pressed forward, driving them back toward the outer edges of the contested sector. The humans' algorithms anticipated enemy movements, allowing the fleet to adjust continuously. The alien officers executed maneuvers with precision, each decision informed by both experience and the humans' guidance. After hours of careful engagement, the enemy retreated, leaving the sector under alien control.
There were no dramatic explosions or catastrophic losses, but the effect was undeniable. The tide of the war had shifted, at least in this region.
For the first time in decades, the alien fleet experienced a clear and decisive victory. In the aftermath, Aron called a meeting with the senior officers.
"Today we have seen what is possible when we embrace change," he said. "Our fleet has survived countless battles, but now we understand that survival alone is not enough.
We must continue to innovate, adapt, and trust those who help us." Kale nodded. "The humans have given us more than technology. They have given us perspective, creativity, and confidence. And that is worth more than any weapon."
The humans observing from Earth and aboard support vessels shared a quiet sense of pride. They had seen the results of their collaboration, and the outcome exceeded their expectations.
They understood that the alliance was fragile, dependent on mutual respect, trust, and continued cooperation. But it had worked, and the proof was in the success of the fleet. As the days passed, the fleet continued to patrol and secure territory, integrating human insights into every operation. Crew members trained relentlessly, simulations ran continuously, and improvements were made in real time. Every engagement reinforced the lessons learned, and the fleet became a living, evolving force. The combination of alien discipline and human creativity created a balance neither species had imagined possible. Even as victories accumulated, Aran remained cautious. He knew the war was far from over. Larger fleets, more advanced weapons, and cunning strategies waited beyond the horizon. Yet now, he faced the future not with fear, but with hope and determination. The alliance with humans had transformed not only the fleet but the crew itself. They had regained confidence, learned new ways to fight, and discovered the power of adaptability. One evening, as the fleet moved through the darkness, Elena walked along the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She reflected on the journey from the fleet's arrival at Earth to this moment.
They had come seeking repairs, expecting only to survive. Instead, they had found collaboration, innovation, and hope.
And in the process, they had helped shape a force that could now challenge the enemy in ways that had once seemed impossible. Aaron joined her quietly.
"They are no longer the same fleet that arrived here," he said softly. "They have changed, and so have we. The war will never be the same." Elena nodded. "We've done more than repair ships. We've given them something no technology alone could provide: belief in themselves." The fleet continued its journey, securing territory, protecting allies, and preparing for the challenges ahead.
The humans remained a vital part of the operation, offering guidance, insights, and creative solutions.
Their presence was not just practical. It inspired confidence, courage, and a sense of shared purpose among the alien crew. And finally, as the fleet rested in a secured sector, Aaron allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. They had survived countless battles, faced overwhelming odds, and endured losses that had once seemed insurmountable. But now, with humans as allies, they had discovered a new kind of strength.
It was not just power, skill, or technology. It was trust, creativity, and hope.
The war was far from over, but the future looked different. The fleet had changed, the enemy had been challenged, and Earth had proven to be more than just a place of repairs. It was a partner, a teacher, and a catalyst for transformation. The Alliance had altered the course of the war in ways that could not be undone. As stars streaked past the observation windows, Aran silently vowed to protect this new strength, this new hope.
The fleet had been restored, armed, and guided by humans, and now it carried a mission larger than survival. They were not only defending themselves, they were shaping the future of the galaxy.
And in the quiet of space, above a small blue planet that had once seemed insignificant, a new chapter of history was being written. The alliance between humans and aliens had not only changed the fleet, it had changed the war and perhaps the fate of countless worlds yet to come.
For the first time in decades, the alien fleet moved forward with purpose, strength, and a vision for victory. And for the first time, Commander Aaron felt something he had not known in a long time: hope.